which means to look at themselves and what am I doing here? What am I doing which is causing me to be unhappy or causing this person not to be able to give me what I need? So I think the worst thing about this situation is that we solve our problems by just saying that everyone else is to blame for our unhappiness, and then we just rest on that, and then there's no need to analyze, to grow, to evolve as a person. So this course, this 6 sessions, is about a third possibility: non-suppression and non-aggression. It's about respecting ourselves and respecting the other. As I mentioned earlier, the basis is love for ourselves and for the other. And there are 3 techniques, 3 tools. It's self-analysis, that is to know what are my needs. And often we know our needs only superficially. That is, I want this person to do this particular act. But actually behind that is a need for recognition, a need for affirmation. So I have to get clear what I may see only my needs superficially, and if I just go to that person, I want you to do this, that's just a command. He may not understand why, but when I say, I need that in order to understand you love me, or that you care for me, it's a whole different thing. But we can't say that because we're afraid that that makes us open and vulnerable and weak, and that we may be hurt by being so honest about our needs, which we consider to be weaknesses. We've been programmed by a society, especially in Northern European and American societies, where such vulnerable emotions are considered weakness rather than some kind of honesty or strength. So first is the analysis. Next is learning how to express that through an I message. And third is learning how to listen. So let's discuss the I messages. Okay. Today we're going to discuss 2 types of I messages. The first is the declarative I message. There are 4 types of I messages. It doesn't really matter into which category your I message falls. That's not important. We just separate them in order to understand the situations in which we will use I messages. So today we're going to discuss declarative I messages and responsive I messages. Declarative I messages are messages which we give in situations, in simple situations, in which there is no serious problem. In a few weeks we will learn the confrontive I messages and the preventive I messages, which have to do with situations in which we see a problem coming, or already we're in full war with someone and we want to see what we can do about it. So the declarative I message is simply expressing simple needs. I would like to go to the movies, rather than waiting for the other to think about it. Or I would like to go for a walk, or I would like some help. Or I prefer not to do that, something that we usually do. Rather than suppressing myself continuously in all of my personal and social relationships, very simply, with the simplicity of a small child who has not yet learned all of these complicated games that adults play, and they just say what they wanted, what they don't want, so clearly and innocently. In that same way, you see, although we have programmed to go out this evening, I'm very tired. Rather than going out with that tiredness and that resentment that I have to go out and then to be unhappy and to interpret the whole evening as a disaster and how miserable all that was, speaking the truth. So the declarative I message, to think about various needs or beliefs or feelings or desires which sometimes we tend not to communicate to the persons around us, and that may end up in our developing in a certain amount of resentment or doing things that we don't want to do, which don't fulfill us. So that's one type of message. Now, in an I message, there are, what do we communicate? We communicate, first of all, our feelings. It's important. We have learned to communicate beliefs only. And beliefs, your beliefs may be totally different from my beliefs. We can always disagree on beliefs. And no one can say who is right. Because every person's belief system is his own private property, and there's no one who knows who is right and who is wrong. Everyone believes that he is right and the others are wrong. So we'll never find common ground just speaking about beliefs. But when I say, regardless of my beliefs, I feel resentment when you do that. My beliefs may be wrong. They may be completely illogical. I may be paranoid at this point. But that particular act makes me feel these emotions. Then he understands. There's nothing he can say. You understand what I mean? That is, we all have common emotions. The emotions that we have are 20, 30 emotions. Beliefs are millions. And so we may never, when I explain my emotions to the other person, then I touch him. But the problem is that we usually just talk about what he's doing wrong and never explain that I have fear. I am being hurt. I have anger. But we just focus on what the other person is doing. That's a you message. And that makes him defensive. He doesn't hear anything. So the first and most important thing in an I message is our feelings, our emotions. Now I remember when I first heard about this system was when I was teaching in Beirut. I was 24 years, well, it was about 25 years ago. I was teaching at a high school, and we were learning it in the context of the students. And the person that was giving us the course asked us to write our emotions. And I didn't know any of my emotions at all. I mean, I just could not identify my emotions. I was completely out of touch. So it's not so easy. I mean, I knew that I wasn't feeling well, but I didn't know what was that emotion. Was it fear? Was it jealousy? Was it anger? Was it disappointment? Was it bitterness? I mean, it's something which I had never thought about and never looked into. And so it's not so simple. I mean, it takes some time. Some person has to start working on seeing what do I actually feel? What is that called? Except feeling badly. What is that called? What do I feel when you're doing that? That's important to help the other person understand me and to be open. Secondly, to communicate our needs, our emotions, our needs. Now, emotions, don't get the idea that we're interested in expressing only negative emotions. I also realized that I was totally blocked in expressing positive emotions. It was very difficult for me to say to a woman, I love you. Or to say to persons how much I respect them or appreciate them or care for them. So an I message is not just saying to someone what problem I have with them or what needs I have. It's also learning to express the positive emotions that we have towards the persons in our life who we take it for granted that they know it, but they need to hear it. Just as they take it for granted that we know it, but that we need to hear it. That we're all really these little children who need to hear it. We know it, we see the acts perhaps, but we always doubt it. We always doubt whether the other person cares, whether he respects us. And I mean, because we doubt ourselves, we learn to doubt ourselves. And as many times as we hear it, after a few days or a few hours, we need to hear it again. And so it's learning also to express the positive things. Thirdly, our beliefs. It is useful to also explain our beliefs, but in the context also of our emotions and our needs. And fourthly, our reactions. Because the persons who have regular contact with us see our reactions and interpret them in their own context. This brings to mind the classic example that I witnessed in a couple married for about 40 years, 45 years, in which when they were together at parties or any kind of social gathering, every time the man would start speaking about some subject, he was into philosophical things, he would start speaking about, or politics, or whatever it may be. His wife would make this sound. And after 40 years in my office here, as we were doing effective communication, he brought up, you know, I'm really upset with you, because every time we go out together, you make this sound, and you're not agreeing with me, and you're making me feel very uncomfortable in front of these people. And after 40 years, she says, I make that sound when I agree with you. And I've seen so many of these situations in which people come and they say, well, he's doing this, and we interpret completely differently what is going on in the other person. I mean, we're all actually very paranoid. I mean, we all have so many fears and so much self-doubt that we interpret so many things that other people do as they don't love me. I've seen that so many people come up to me and say, well, you don't love me, do you? Because you did that. And it was the furthest thing from my mind. And I've seen it in myself, interpreting other people's action in that way. And when I go confront them, they were just in their own world. It had nothing to do with me, what they were doing. And I interpreted it out of my own lack of self-respect, that this person, because he's doing this, I'm the center of the world. He's doing this because he doesn't love me. So it is important to explain our reactions, why we react in the way that we react in these various situations. So there are four things, basic things that we want to express: our emotions, our needs, our beliefs, and our reactions. But of course, in order to explain those, we have to understand them and to help analyze them to a certain degree. So for next week, what I would like you to do is to write down. It's easier in the beginning to write these messages, and then we can share them in the group afterwards and see where we're getting off the track, whether it's clear or not, what we have failed to express in that message. Often we disguise you messages in an I message, with a wolf in sheep's clothing. That is it. We start out with an I, but then we just turn it around and it's a big accusation, you know. Often we disguise a command in an I message. You know, we're just telling someone what they must do, and that's not an I message. So it is good to practice these things. It is good to write them down in the beginning, bring them, look at them, so that we can. It's not easy. It's so easy to fall back into these old patterns of communication. We've seen our parents do it. We've seen teachers do it. We've seen everyone communicate in a different way. And it's not so easy to learn this.